Even as a player, I think it would have been good. I would have loved to have something fresh because it was top six, bottom six. I think 14 would have been brilliant. Adding an extra 2 teams wouldn't have been huge on everybody's budget. Also for the fans' experience as well, it would have been exceptional. Imagine coming down to Ayr one weekend, going up to Aberdeen next weekend, possibly going to an Inverness, going to a Dunfermline. So it would have been a great experience for them to go and see all stadiums in Scotland as well.
Hello and welcome to the Improving Scottish Football podcast. My name is Kieran and today I'm at Somerset Park, home of course to Ayr United. And we're speaking to Scott Brown and also to Graeme Mathie, who is the Managing Director and he's the former Sporting Director at Hibs. We're going to cover things like player pathways, the cooperation agreement and also league reconstruction. But before we jump in, please do make sure you follow the podcast or are subscribed. Make sure you like and comment and all that good stuff. But please also consider leaving a 5-star review. It would really help the podcast grow and I would be forever grateful. Now, Improving Scottish Football is proudly sponsored by Hollis Financial Planning, a family-run firm based on Scotland's west coast, but working with clients right across the UK. They help families, business owners and individuals plan for the future using cutting-edge cash flow modelling tools and a wide range of investment options. They're down to earth, easy to talk to, and genuinely care about helping people make smart financial decisions. Visit hollisfinancialplanning.co.uk to book your free 30-minute discovery call. All right, Scott, Graeme, good to see you both, and thanks for having me along to Ayr United. We'll kick off by just kind of jumping into the thick of it with a big question of, if you could change just one thing about Scottish football, what would it be? And Scott, I'm going to come to you first with that one.
Just one? I've got 2 things rattling in my mind that's very close to each other, to be fair. I think one thing I would try and find in the budget is to try and get referees full-time. I think the more coaching, the more experience they get, the more day-to-day activity as well. Since Wally's came in, it's been really, really good, like the understanding level. So we're slowly getting there, but I think it has to have a bigger step as well. And I'd say my second point is obviously more young Scottish kids in and around the first team, especially probably in the Premier League, and it'll hopefully benefit everyone in the longevity of time, but also shows like the pathway of younger kids getting into the first team, having experience and opportunities of playing, whether it's Premier League, Championship, and like we try and enforce that as much as we possibly can here. So for us, it's important that we get young kids through, and especially Scottish ones as well.
So what is the answer to that? Like, is it up to each club just to take it upon themselves to play their young players, or does there need to be something mandated that says you need, X number of?
I'd probably say something mandated. I think, yeah. Obviously, when you go into Europe, you have to have a certain amount of Scottish core players being in the squad and stuff like that. But I would say they've got to try and be in the squad, as in that 18, 19 bodies every week, and having that opportunity of being in there. And, it'd be a great experience for them as well, but you have to have good enough quality coming through as well. So you have to have good enough coaches all the way through, and that's a hard bit, coming through the grassroots and making sure they're coached and to that standard of going into first team level and first team environment as well.
Graeme, what about you? What's your answer?
One big thing, so I had 2 as well actually, so I'd love to see, 3 things actually. I'd love to see a 13-team Premier League and Ayr United in it, so just said that Scott means we could get a couple of weekends off through the season, so that'd be great for everybody. I think all the teams would appreciate that. So the fact we've come up with the idea means we should get first refusal on the 13th place. But the 2 main things I had was, you'd love to see the Scotland national team, male and female qualifying for major tournaments regularly, and you'd love to see our club teams, going as far as they possibly can in Europe, and that's not just the kind of historical big 2, that would be, all the teams that can qualify and get into the latter stages of European competition. So I think when we look at countries maybe with a similar population, they seem to be able to outperform us on the pitch, nationally and at club level. So it'd be great to try and figure out how we can find the silver bullet to fix all that.
Yeah, well, this podcast is going to come out before the next qualifier, so so fingers crossed. Yeah. Fingers crossed we get some good results. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of bringing in younger players, because that's something you guys have done pretty well at Ayr United. I think it's fair to say, and a big part of that is the cooperation agreement. How transformative has that been for you guys, and do you think for kind of young Scottish players as a whole?
For us, it's been incredible because we've got people that's been at Celtic, been in and about the first team at Celtic environment, having a great relationship with first team coaches and what they expect, but also that winning mentality, whether it's in the B team, whether it's in the first team as well. They've had that drive and that experience as well to go and see what the lads are like James Forrest, a Callum McGregor, to go and deal with them day to day and have an understanding. And see, when they've came down, they've brought that into our training group. They've brought the dedication, the standards, but also the quality on the pitch as well has kind of jumped up as well through leaps and bounds. And you can see from Kyle and Jude first coming in to what they are now, it is night and day as well. And that's just to playing at the level, to have an understanding of the level as well. So like, huge appreciation obviously for Celtic to do the co-op, but it also bounces really good for us as well, because the ones that we've sent on the co-op agreement have then jumped back into our squad when we've needed them as well. And look, they've been a huge part of our squad, and they have to be in and around our group as well most of the times, because they go away at Easter in the part-time. So they come in, they understand what we want, but also then go and get an experience of a total different manager, different shapes at times as well, and to go and be in a dressing room and we're grown men and expect to win week in, week out. So look, it's been really good for that, but then they came back into our environment and being in the squads came on and also helped us as well. So look, bouncing from Celtic to us down to East Stirling, it's the co-op agreement from this SFA has been exceptional for everybody, because we wouldn't be able to afford these players. We wouldn't be able to guarantee them to come in, and also like the agreement's a huge part because we get them for nothing, and we've got two there, and at the times they can go back to Celtic at any opportunity, and they've been back in, they've been out, and look, it works best for both teams, I think, for me on a personal level, and hopefully for the players as well.
So this is Kyle Ure and Jude Bonner, who are both from Celtic. You've also got Leon King as well, who that's just more of a standard loan from Rangers, right? Yeah. But all three of these guys are playing pretty much every game, or they're coming on every game, right?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And like King has came in and he's been fantastic for us. He got a little injury right at the start, but he's kicked on really well, and you can see his composure and his quality, and that's why he's at a good club like Rangers, and he's obviously had a very, very good grounding all the way through. He's understood what it is like to play with top quality players as well, and he's brought that into our environment as well. But the calmness, and like, he's played first team, he's played in Europe, and he's came into our dressing room and he's been unbelievable with our lads as well, but also with the staff as well. So like, you can get a lot of the young lads that think they're better than anybody else coming into these changing rooms, but the three that we've brought in have been exceptional.
Brilliant. And Graeme, like, overview, I mean, you're vastly experienced in the world of Scottish football. You know, you were sporting director at Hibs. How do you see the cooperation agreement as a whole, you know, as that bigger picture piece? Is it the sort of innovation, is it that progressive thinking that we need?
I think it is, and I think, I mean, huge credit to Chris Dockett and Andy Gould at Scottish FA for the way they implemented it, because I think, you know, we've all been involved in Scottish football long enough to have seen a number of different reviews about youth development and trying to get more young Scottish players in on the pitch. But I think what the guys did, as they have done with the new youth review that they brought out, is look at loads of evidence to say, well, actually, where are we in comparison with other countries? That then helps to identify the problem, and I think that's helped lead a number of people towards a solution, because that's always been difficult, is to get broad agreement across the game in Scotland in terms of what direction to take. So, you know, huge credit to them for not only coming up with the concept, but the way they implemented it. And I think, as Scott said, you know, for us, it's brilliant to have 3 young players at East Stirlingshire, and a great example in recent weeks of Lucas McRoberts, because there would have been a decision about Lucas in the summer, you know, because of the numbers that we've got in the squad. We might have been tempted just to keep him and have him here, and then when he gets the opportunity and he's needed to come onto the pitch against Queen's Park a few weeks ago, he probably wouldn't have been that ready, because he wouldn't have played. We might have been able to get him a few bounce games here and there, but you know, the fact we've got a young player that's coming in from playing more or less 90 minutes every week at the Lone League with East Stirlingshire is really helpful. And you know, I think for the boys it really gives them a bit of an aspiration, so they need to be out there performing well in order for them to get the call to come back in and be part of our squad. So that flexibility at our level is great. I think in speaking to Andy and Chris, the kind of group they had in mind also was the ones that Scott said go with their parent clubs to European competition. because they can be sitting on the bench in Europe during the week and then potentially come and play at a co-op club at the weekend in a different level. So that's definitely a generation of players, I think. And listen, Leon might have been part of that group that, when you look at his CV, load of good number of games at Rangers, but maybe if he was an age to go out in a co-op agreement 3 or 4 years ago, maybe would have had, you know, twice or three times the number of professional games under his belt. So it is innovation, there's no doubt about it. Something that Chris, I know, saw work well in other countries, and you know, it certainly worked well for us this year, and hopefully it was a pilot, so hopefully the Scottish FA continue with it, we can continue to see benefit from it.
Nice. And then what you guys are doing from an Ayr United perspective is there's quite a lot of development going on. You know, obviously is it in the North Stand? Is it?
Yeah, North Stand.
North Stand. You got training pitch,
yep.
New gym.
Yep.
They're not quite finished yet, but they're underway. So Ayr certainly seems to be a bit of an ambitious club. Like, where does the club want to go? What's the chairman's vision?
$1 million question. I'm happy to take that on. So, no, so do you know what? I think both myself and Scott both bought into the chairman's vision for the club. You know, he's an ambitious individual, but he's really clear in terms of how he saw things moving forward. It was never about throwing, you know, as much money as possible at a player budget and keeping your fingers crossed. He was very much about leaving a legacy and trying to build the club sustainably. So you're right, you know, a number of big ticket items, the building across the road, houses a new club shop, supporters bar, offices for the staff. So that was an income generator, because it's used during the week as well for a number of different activities. He's remodelled the car park, which anybody that's been to Somerset and in the not too distant past knows it used to look like the surface of the moon. So that was a big change in there to make that look a lot more professional. But the two big things that he's invested a huge amount of money in was the North Stand. So, you know, seating deck, still the original terracing, so very much in keeping with the traditional feel of Somerset Park itself. But two hospitality venues in there again, which on match days are great for us, but during the week can host a whole number of things, from funeral teas to parties, you know, Christmas parties and all that type of thing in there. So a great way, I think, to generate revenue outside of what happens on the match day, which has been great. And then the next project that he's getting his teeth into now is the training ground, so he doesn't tend to hang about for too long before he moves on to the next thing. So I'm just delighted that he's a builder by trade, and it's his company that's doing it all, and I just need to make the tea at the meetings and don't really need to do much else. So it's just nice to see it all coming together. But no, I mean, I think, joking aside, that was a vision that both of us bought into, that it was a sustainable model. It was something that was going to build and invest in infrastructure to generate revenue to take us forward. You know, and obviously it was great that we brought in Scott and Stephen with their ambition and drive on the pitch, and I think the two things at this moment in time are managed together really well.
And Scott, presumably ambition is the Prem.
Look, the ambition is every season do as well as we possibly can. It is, you got to push it. We've got a lot of good clubs in this league, and it doesn't really matter what your budget is at times. Everybody struggles through a period throughout this, and anybody can beat anybody. That's one great thing about the Championship. And you look at the results at the weekend, you think, Jesus, how's that happened? And look, for us, it's about just being stable. That's the most important thing for the lads, having an understanding of what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, but also trying to boost the squad as much as we possibly can. Like, there's going to be players coming and going. It's part of football. It's about our job now to get the best out of those players that are in there now, and then hopefully we can add a little bit again once January comes as well, and we can go from strength to strength. And like, we had a huge kind of turnover in the summer. We lost a lot of players going out and this is a fresh group that started. We've tried to sign up as much as we possibly can and try and get a proper good core of the squad, because look, I believe in the core of the squad, because you look at what we were talking about Falkirk earlier. Falkirk had that core of the squad since they've been down in League One, into the Championship and into the Premier League, and they're doing really, really well. So our main focus is trying to pull those lads together, having an understanding, but also getting that winning mentality back in week after week, and not dealing with defeats and draws too often, hopefully.
Obviously, we know the Championship is an incredibly challenging league, and that's one of the things that makes it brilliant. What are your thoughts on, you know, the whole league reconstruction kind of debate? Because obviously,
even as a player, I think it would have been good. I would have loved to have something fresh, because it was top six, bottom six. Whoever finishes seventh in the league ends up with more points than whoever finishes sixth, and possibly whoever finishes fifth in the league as well. So, like, I thought the bigger league, whether you have to split again or whatever it would have been, maybe go around 3 times, it would have been great for even away days for other fans, having maybe 2 teams getting relegated, 2 teams coming up, and having the opportunity to hopefully Championship clubs coming in and competing against Rangers, Celtic, Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen as well. And it would have showed you the difference of levels as well, but also for the fans' experience as well, it would have been exceptional. Imagine coming down to Ayr one weekend, going up to Aberdeen next weekend, possibly going to an Inverness, going to a Dunfermline. So it would have been a great experience for them to go and see all stadiums in Scotland as well. Like in different leagues, they've done similar with the top six and bottom six, but they've also revamped other leagues as well, and it's worked really well. So I don't see why we can't look forward to that in the future, but here's hoping we can try and push that, and that's Graeme's job more than mine, to be fair.
But what would your dream be, like a 14-team league, 16?
I think 14 would have been brilliant. I think adding an extra couple in there and just trying to push it and seeing how far you could have gone. Like 16, it's all about money. It's always going to be about money, and I get that, it's part and parcel, but adding an extra 2 teams wouldn't have been huge on everybody's budget, and like you never know what could happen. European Championship, wherever they end up going, you'd have had Falkirk coming up last year, and nobody would have expected them to do this well. So look, it's brilliant. It shows you teams from the Championship can do really, really well, and teams that have came up from the Champions like Livingston in the last few years have stayed up there for 4 or 5 years. So like, there is opportunities for us to do that and stay in, but you need more of a chance, because you can see the way the playoffs are. It's always for the team in the Premier League. It always does settle the team in the Premier League. If you get through it, you end up playing an extra 6 games. They play 2, so like it is hard for any team wanting to come up. But like, on any given occasion, anyone can beat anyone. I get that, but it's that consistency to do it over those 6 games.
And Graeme, what do you think? I know you were joking about a 13-team league, but you know, it's so difficult to get out of the Championship and into the Premiership. So does there need a bit of reconstruction, or at least like a little bit of fluidity through the playoffs more?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think from a sales perspective, we would love that. And I sat on the SPFL board the last time it was discussed, and look, I can see the challenges, and I think what we also need to take into account, Scott mentioned that, you know, the financial sort of landscape of Scottish football has changed recently. So you've now got, you know, aside from Celtic and Rangers that were always miles beyond anything else, you know, there's a collection of clubs that have been very ambitious and have got some pretty significant backing and are now spending more than the rest. So there used to be probably, you know, Celtic and Rangers would outspend everybody else, and the rest would be not a million miles away. I think there's maybe 3, possibly even 4 levels in the Premier League of spend, which then when you drop down at the Championship means that there's a huge gap. So, you know, the challenges I think are obvious for teams that want to try and get there. The challenges I think in reconstructing and even having a 14 was trying to, as the TV contract would suggest, to try and get as many Celtic Rangers games as possible, which means a pretty early split, which means you know, you've got teams that might be looking into a kind of January, February period of time really being the bottom half of that split, where another number of months that they might have found themselves at the top. So it's not easy, but I guess, you know, we were certainly as a Championship league asked to consider, you know, 2 more teams coming in here and trying to do something different at League 1 and League 2 level. And I think the general feeling was, look, we'd be up for change, we'd be up for a conversation, but it needs to involve everybody. It can't just be everything below the Premier League, because there are a number of teams, Ayr United one of them, that have ambitions to be at the top end of the division and see where it takes us. And I think that becomes harder the more sort of teams that you've got in the league. So it's not an easy one to fix, I think, is a long and a short answer, but certainly feels like it's something that the supporters are open to seeing, a bit of change, something a bit different. And I guess from a competition perspective, there is also an argument to say a 10-team Championship becomes really exciting every year, because there's not much between the teams, and you know, you've got different people challenging it for the top 4 in the playoffs. You've got different teams trying to avoid the bottom 2 places as well. So I get the added excitement, but certainly for us selfishly, an expanded Premier League would be great, and hopefully a wee chance for us to get there.
So obviously that, you know, it went to a vote last year. You know, you've obviously sat on the SPFL board. How are those kind of conversations played out? How do those decisions get made? Do you have frustrations in terms of like how that process works?
On a personal level, I suppose my role on the SPFL board was to represent, you know, 1 of 2 representatives of the Championship as a collective 10. And I think what I would say is, you know, all the people that were involved at that time and now, you know, we all got on well, and I think we're all able to be pretty open with each other about our views. So there was a real strong view from the Championship that we were open to change, but it had to involve everything. It wasn't just a kind of below the Premier League type conversation. So I guess all I can do then is go into the board meetings and represent that view, and ultimately it was probably quite an unpopular view, and disappointing for many people, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, you know, there's another number of different conversations about potentially sometimes how finances are derived and split that I think we would all appreciate if we had a blank sheet of paper and maybe things would be done a little bit differently. But we kind of, I think we've probably got ourselves to the point of saying, look, we are where we are, and I'm certainly took a step back from that to try and focus on Ayr United and see where we can go with the resources and the income that we've got, and try and do the best we can with that.
Yeah. It's well, it's one of these ones that's hopefully going to be an ongoing conversation, and it's not like that's the end of that. And Scott, how do you see kind of the bigger picture of Scottish football at the moment?
As Graeme says, there's a lot of teams spending a lot more money than they probably ever have done, and it's good. It's encouraging for Scottish football as well, because it helps revenue, it helps supporters come in, and like, it gets better quality players in as well that everyone can afford. So like, that side, brilliant. Obviously, like Rangers and Celtic, two biggest clubs in Scotland, and obviously Hearts are thinking they want to change that. I get that, it's part and parcel, and they've got Tony Bloom coming in there that's done a fantastic job, Dell as well, doing a great job. So look, competition's always going to be high. We'll always back Celtic 150%, so you'll no need to worry about that on this podcast. But no, look, there's always going to be speed bumps. There's always going to be a team doing really well, a team struggling, and the press always batter the ones that are struggling. And it's a hard place to play football. It's a hard place to manage, especially in that Premier League, because everyone knows better than everybody else. And like, there's been fantastic managers coming in and leaving. There's been fantastic managers being there for a long time as well. So, look, it's encouraging that you've got top quality managers wanting to come, and it is encouraging that. But for us, I think the European football is a big thing that brings in a lot of money throughout the leagues, not just to the Premier League as well. And hopefully they can kick on, and hopefully Scotland can kick on doing that, doing really well for us as well. Because like, better Scotland do, the better everyone in Europe does, the more money it generates, and like, the more it puts us on the map as well.
100%. Oh, if only we can get to the World Cup. I mean, that would just be so transformative.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Yeah, never made any of the Euros or World Cup as a player, so let's hope they can kind of go and do that this year. It'd be amazing for Steve. And I told Steve I've still not retired yet, so I'm still available.
Brilliant. Guys, is there anything else that you want to throw out? Anything, any other final thoughts?
You know, one you'd asked about our ambitions as a club, and I think that's important, you know, in terms of roles like myself, to be able to try and define that, because I do think, you know, the club has moved forward so much quicker, I think, than we all probably assumed it might. I keep telling people it was sort of 4 summers ago that there was 1,000 people on the pitch when we avoided relegation from the Championship against Partick the last day of the season. So, you know, the change has been pretty rapid, and I do think it's important when you look at throughout Scottish football at the length of time head coaches and managers get. It's not long now, and there always seems to be, when you go through a tough run of results, that, you know, there's a call for somebody to lose their job, and I think that's really important for clubs in general, and certainly people in my role, to be able to articulate. We know where we are at any given time, and we know where we're trying to get to, and make sure that those goals are realistic. So we're not demanding that Scott and Stephen get us promoted in the next 2 years, because we know that there's a bit of a gap between where we are and the things that we need to put in place in order to go and get there. I think what is key, though, that we still harbour that ambition to do it, and that we've still got the desire to try and improve loads of things in and around the club to make the opportunity to do that better. So that would be one thing to kind of highlight. You know, I think the wider conversation about Scottish football, I think Scott articulated it really well there, and I think the challenge is now the Scottish FA are on it, is looking at, well, what's the future looking like? So if there is a lack of under-21 players playing the Premier League, that's going to cause a problem at some point. So where are they? How do we get them in? You know, the revenue that's coming in makes the league exciting, and certainly, as Scott said, you know, the Tony Bloom investment at Hearts is really fascinating to see how that pans out. But what does that mean for the national team then in a number of years' time if there isn't that group coming through? So the youth review that Andy and Chris have pulled together has got some really interesting stuff in it, and we could probably have another podcast trying to dig into some of that stuff. But I guess it is now trying to find out what the big issues are, and trying collectively to find solutions. So it's great to share some of the chat with you just now, and looking at a kind of podcast that's trying to look beneath the surface and some of the obvious stuff to get some answers. So it's been great to chat.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, guys. And I think, you've just kind of hit the nail on the head. That word ambition, whether it's Hearts, whether it's Ayr United, I think that's possibly something that's been lacking a lot of, from Scottish football, whether that's at a club level or more of a national level. So it's good that there's quite a few tangible examples of clubs and organisations trying to be better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scott, Graeme, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
A big thank you to everyone who was watching and listening.